Ephraim Cole was herding his cattle back to the barn when he heard something break in the wind. A rough, hoarse sound, half moan and half cry, like someone trying to call out to God but with no breath left. He dismounted, walking through the cactus brush, and then he saw her, a native woman, hanging upside down between two wooden stakes, blood dripping onto the sand. The word thief had been carved into her chest with sap, smearing under the blood-red sunset. Ephraim stood frozen, hands trembling slightly. The sight, it was just like the day he lost his sister. He climbed up and cut the rope. Her body fell into his arms, heavy and limp, her blood mixing with the hot, dusty earth. As he laid her down and wiped the blood from her face, she opened her eyes. That deep, fierce gaze, terrified, but still alive. She whispered, "The sheriff's two sons." Then she slipped away, her faint breathing melting into the wind. Ephraim bowed his head, his old eyes blurred with tears. He knew, tonight, God would not sleep, and this land was about to witness something righteous even if it had to be paid for in blood. Ephraim sat by the fire, listening to the faint breathing of the girl on the bed. The firelight flickered across her sun-browned skin, wrists marked by rope burns, and eyelids twitching as if still trapped in an unfinished nightmare. As the first light of dawn slipped through the cracks in the door, she opened her eyes. Her voice was rough, but every word cut through the air like a blade. "The two sons of Sheriff Dalton. They dragged me off the wagon, said I stole silver. Then they beat me, tied me up." She choked, gasping for breath. "Then they did vile things to humiliate me. When they finished, they laughed. Hung me upside down between two stakes in the field. Left me there to die, so the crows could get to me before God ever did." Ephraim said nothing. He just stood there, his old eyes dimmed by the ash of memory. He knew that silence, the silence of someone who had seen the worst and still had to go on living. She continued, her voice soft as wind slipping through the cracks in the wood. "People passed by, but no one stopped. Out here, they fear power more than they fear sin." Ephraim heard an old, rusted sound deep inside him, the final breath of his sister, back in 1873, who had been hanged just the same. He had once sworn never to get involved again. But oaths out west never last longer than the wind. Ephraim cleaned her wounds, wrapping them with an old shirt. She looked at him, her eyes wet but still burning. "I am Mina Sunday. I will not die until justice knows my name." He gave a tired smile. "Your name will be known, and so will their crimes." Outside, the sun rose, casting its first rays across a field stained with dried blood. A crow landed on the dead tree near the door, cawing a low, ragged warning. Ephraim stepped onto the porch, hand gripping the hilt of the knife at his hip. He was no longer a cattleman, he was a bearer of fire. Out west, when a good man is forced to pick up a gun, it means heaven has shut its gates, and hell is about to open. The midday sun over Red Mesa burned white, like forged steel, sweeping across rotting porches and the souls still trying to survive beneath them. Ephraim was stacking hay near the horse barn when he heard the pounding of hooves on the dirt road. 5 riders. Dust rose behind them like gunpowder smoke. They wore black leather coats, pistols strapped to their shoulders, faces hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats. The leader, broad-shouldered, thick-bearded, spoke in a raspy voice. "Mr. Cole, word is you are hiding a runaway dark-skinned savage." Ephraim looked up, squinting. In the harsh sunlight, he saw the carved star on the lead rider's saddle, the eldest son of Sheriff Dalton. He spat a wad of tobacco onto the dirt. "There is only cattle and silence on this ranch. Neither of them belong to you." The man gave a dry laugh and stepped off his horse. "Watch your mouth, old man. My father says anyone who harbors a fugitive will be shot on sight." She stole silver from the saloon and disgraced the town's honor. Ephraim did not move. From inside the cabin, Mina watched through the slit in the curtain, her body still wrapped in a blanket, her eyes burning like black fire. Ephraim spoke slowly, each word dropping heavy as stone. "If the town's honor is built on the blood of a woman strung up, then it is not worth a single damn penny." The air froze. 5 hands moved to their holsters almost in unison. Ephraim stayed still, unarmed. His gaze was calm and deep, like someone who had already walked the edge between life and death. "Go ahead," he said quietly. But remember, out here, spilled blood carries a stubborn smell. It clings to your name. A younger rider, still fresh-faced, hesitated. He looked at the old man and saw no fear in his eyes, only the tired resolve of someone who had lost everything but what was right. The leader clenched his jaw and spat into the dirt. "We will be back, and when we are, you and that savage girl will hang from 2 stakes." They turned their horses. Iron hooves slammed the dirt road, kicking up dust that soon vanished into the sunburnt sky. Ephraim watched them go, his hand trembling slightly, then slowly forming a fist. Behind him, Mina stood at the door. Her voice was low. "You should not have provoked them." "I did not provoke," he said, eyes lost in the distance. "I just told the truth." The sky began to darken. Distant thunder grumbling across the plains. A storm was coming, and it was not just weather. Night fell. The storm outside had begun to pour. Wind lashed the wooden walls like a whip, and inside the cabin, only a flickering oil lamp lit the rough wooden table. Mina sat with her back against the wall, still wrapped in the old blanket. The firelight danced across her sun-bronzed skin, now glowing with a warm copper hue. The wound on her shoulder had closed, but her eyes remained wide open, not from fear, but from vigilance. Ephraim poured cold coffee into 2 cups, setting one in front of her. "What do you plan to do when you recover?" She looked at him, her voice low and steady. "I am going to take back my name, and make sure this land remembers it," she told him. In the county courthouse archives, there was a land ledge, or a book, that recorded everything Sheriff Dalton and his sons had done. Forged documents, stolen property, native homes seized and resold to settlers. That book could bury them if someone dared to bring it into the light. Ephraim lit a cigarette. Smoke traced silver lines in the lamp's glow. "Sounds like you are planning a war." "No, I want the truth." She lifted her gaze, eyes as black and deep as burning coal. "Truth can die if no one delivers it." Ephraim understood. They spent the night drawing out their plan. At dawn, Mina would sneak into the county records office behind the church, where the land book was kept. Ephraim would wait outside, posing as a delivery man. They would use carbon paper to copy the pages, then take the copies to the telegraph office at the far end of Main Street, sending them straight to Denver, to the federal office. If the telegram was sent before Dalton found out, they might live. If not, blood would soak this land once more. Rain kept falling, each drop heavy like a heartbeat. Ephraim opened the cupboard and took out his old Colt. He cleaned it carefully. Mina looked at him and asked softly, "Do you think God will forgive us?" Ephraim gave a bitter smile. "I think God left the West a long time ago. It is just us now." She nodded gently, her fingers tightening around the ink pen. Wind howled through the window, making the blank page on the table tremble beneath the oil lamp's glow. "Sometimes," Ephraim said quietly, "justice does not need a gun. It just needs someone brave enough to write what no one wants to read." Thank you for being here. If this story brought back old memories for you red dusty afternoons, the sound of hooves echoing in your chest, consider subscribing to my channel. So each day, we can sit together once more, and I will tell you another tale from the West. Rain fell over the town of Red Mesa like the sky had unleashed all its fury. The main street turned to mud, and lantern lights rippled across the water like broken memories. In the middle of that night, 2 figures moved quietly through the cemetery behind the church, one old, one young. Ephraim Cole wore a long leather coat, cradling a bundle disguised as a delivery. Mina walked beside him, barefoot to make no sound. Each drop of rain lashed their faces like a warning. There was still time to turn back. If only their conscience had not already chosen. The county records building sat between 2 rows of storefronts, iron doors, stone walls, and one broken window in the back. That was their way in. Ephraim nodded. Mina climbed up first. In the dark, her body moved like it was made of wind. She slipped through the window and landed on the floor with a soft thud. In her hands, only a small knife and a blank sheet of paper. Ephraim stayed outside, eyes watching, hand resting on the old Colt beneath his coat. He could hear everything, the rain, the thunder, and the pounding of his own heart. Inside, Mina moved through damp wooden shelves, her fingers brushing across thick ledgers. Then she found it land register, 1,879 to 1,887, Dalton's red stamp still fresh on the spine. She set the book down, flipping to the page where her family's name had been blotted out with darker ink. She hissed under her breath, then carefully laid down the carbon paper and began copying line by line. Suddenly a light flickered in the hallway. A voice rang out. "Who's in there?" She froze. Ephraim heard it and stepped out onto the main road, intentionally dropping the bundle, sending the lid of the box, clattering, echoing through the rain. Two guards broke from their posts, rushing toward him. Ephraim gave a raspy laugh and shouted, "You idiots! I am just making a delivery." Shouts and curses filled the air. He drew his gun and fired one shot into the sky. Inside, Mina knew time was gone. She closed the book and tucked the copied page into her shirt, but as she turned, a flashlight blazed into her face. One guard had stayed behind, standing right in the doorway, gun raised. Without thinking, she threw the oil lamp at him. Flames erupted. The fire tore through paper, wood, and walls. The smell of burning oil spread through the room. She dove through the window, rolled into the mud, clutching the packet to her chest. Ephraim pulled her to her feet. Together, they ran through the downpour, their breath tangled in smoke. Behind them, the fire lit up the sky. Cries of fire echoed down the street. They fled to the western hill, where no light could reach. Mina collapsed, gasping for air. The copied pages trembled in her hands. Ephraim stared back at the burning town, his voice low and rough. "Maybe we have to burn all the lies, before justice can grow back from the ash." Over the western sky, the rain lashed down like a whip. The ground turned into red mud, and in the midst of the chaos, two figures trudged north: Ephraim Cole and Mina Sun, clutching the pages they had traded for fire. Behind them, the sound of hooves thundered. Dalton's 6 riders tore through the rain like wolves in pursuit, torches blazing in the night. Ephraim glanced back, his eyes narrowing like the barrel of a gun. "They are following the scent of gunpowder," he said quietly. Mina replied, "Then let us give them a little more fire to smell." They slid down a muddy slope, crossing a flooded field. Thunder cracked above, lightning flashing across their faces smeared with mud, blood, and ash. A bullet screamed past, slamming into a tree just ahead. Ephraim gritted his teeth, fired 2 shots in return, then pulled Mina behind a large rock. "Do you still have the copy?" "Right here." She pressed her hand to her chest, where the rolled paper was wrapped in oilcloth. Her eyes gleamed like steel. Hoofbeats grew closer. The first 2 riders had spotted them. Mina crouched low, picking up the revolver Ephraim had dropped. Her hands trembling slightly, but her aim did not. A sharp crack split the air. The lead horse buckled, crashing down and throwing its rider into the mud. The second cursed and aimed, but Ephraim's bullet struck him clean in the shoulder. Both the old man and the young woman trembled not from fear, but from cold, from blood, and from justice pulsing through their veins. They did not stop. Ephraim signaled, and they ran again. Up ahead was the dirt path leading to the telegraph shack, a lonely wooden hut beside the railroad. A single light still burned inside. When they burst through the door, the telegraph operator, an old, thin man, jumped in alarm. Ephraim set his gun on the table, voice hoarse. "Listen, friend. We need to send a wire to Denver. Federal authorities. About the crimes of Dalton and his sons." The old man looked at their faces, bloodied, exhausted, but real. He nodded. Mina unwrapped the bundle, her hands shaking as she laid the copied pages on the table. She began to read each line aloud, while the operator typed on the telegraph machine. Each click-click echoed in the night like the heartbeat of truth. Outside, hoofbeats returned. Ephraim cocked his gun. "Keep sending, until they hear it." Lightning tore across the sky, revealing his face cold, soaked, but lit by something holier than faith. As the final signal left the wire, carrying the message toward Denver, Mina whispered, "Now justice has a way." Dawn arrived slowly the next morning, casting a layer of ashen gray over the town of Red Mesa. Smoke still drifted from the half-burned county records building, blending with the scent of wet earth and smoldering coal. Ephraim sat outside the telegraph office, still holding his scratched-up Colt, eyes fixed on the road leading out of town. Mina sat beside him, her shirt torn and stained with blood and mud, but there was no fear in her eyes. Only silence, the kind that belongs to survivors. Then they heard it, the sound of hoofbeats, heavy, steady, and cold as iron. From the north, a company of cavalry bearing the insignia of the federal government rode into town. Their cloaks were soaked, sidearms glinting in the mist. At the front rode an inspector with a silver mustache and a voice as hard as steel. "Which one of you is Ephraim Cole?" Ephraim stood. "That would be me. The telegram last night came in your name. Are the accusations against Sheriff Dalton and his sons true?" Before he could answer, another voice shouted from the end of the street. Sheriff Dalton, his belly bulging, his face pale, wielding an axe, roared, "Lies. They burned the records. Treason. That girl is nothing but savage trash." Mina stepped out from under the porch. The morning wind blew through her long black hair, still wet with rain and blood, her eyes blazing through the fog. She said nothing. She simply raised the bundle of copied pages. "Here is your signature, Dalton. Here is the land that belonged to my family. And here is proof you sold people for gold." The inspector looked down at the inked lines, then back up. "Arrest him." Dalton screamed and reached for his gun, but the gunshot rang out before he could aim. Ephraim's Colt was still smoking. Dalton's two sons charged only to be tackled and shackled by the cavalry. The clink of iron cuffs echoed down the empty street. The townspeople began opening their doors. Pale faces peered out, curious, afraid, and then, for the first time, someone bowed their head to Mina. A saloon keeper stepped forward and handed her a dry cloth. "You do not have to hide anymore, child." Mina nodded gently. She looked at Ephraim, and a small smile touched her lips like sunlight breaking through the clouds. He nodded back, voice deep as the soil beneath them. "Today, we saw the rarest thing in the West." She asked, "What is that?" "Justice, carried in by the truth." Above them, the mist began to lift, and pale golden light spread across the rain-soaked rooftops. Dalton was led through the street in chains, each clatter of the cuffs sounding like the last of his sins falling away. 3 days later, the rain had finally stopped. Out on the southern field of Red Mesa, where once a girl had hung, there now remained only 2 charred wooden stakes. Thin smoke still rose from them, like a confession whispered by the earth itself. Mina's son stood there, her black hair flowing in the wind, her sun-kissed figure dusted with morning light. Her wounds had closed, but her eyes still held the weight of unsettled souls. Ephraim Cole rode up on horseback, stopping a few paces behind her. He looked at the 2 wooden stakes, then at the woman before him, no longer a victim, but a witness. In her hands was a telegram from Denver, a short message, but powerful enough to change a life. Case of Dalton closed, property of the Sun family restored. Respect to those who spoke the truth. Mina gave a soft smile, not happy, not sad, just deep. "They gave the house back, but my father is still gone." Ephraim lowered his head. "Your father can rest now. He raised a daughter who dared to live like this." The wind moved across the field, carrying with it the sound of distant church bells. Mina picked up a handful of ash, letting it rest in her palm. "I used to think justice had to be taken with a gun." Ephraim looked at her, his smile tired. "Sometimes, paper and ash outlast bullets." They stood in silence. The sun began to rise, casting golden light over 2 lonely figures. Ephraim turned to her, his voice low, as if speaking to himself. "Will you stay?" "Yes, I will rebuild my father's store. And when native children are beaten or chased away, they will have a place to go." He nodded, turning his horse. "That is enough. Sometimes God sends someone, just when you have stopped believing in him." As Ephraim's figure disappeared over the hill, Mina kept watching. The wind swept across the field, lifting the ash into silver streaks that sparkled in the sunday. She whispered, as if speaking to the land itself, "I was hung between heaven and earth to die, but it was this land that lowered me back down to live again." She turned, walking toward the town now glowing with light where dew-covered rooftops welcomed a new day. Behind her, the old wooden stakes collapsed, falling into each other in silence. Out west, they say justice is the sound of a gunshot in the night. But some nights, justice is just the clicking of a telegraph machine in the rain, carrying the truth of a girl and the redemption of a man too late to save anyone else. My friend, Ephraim, was never a hero. He was just an old man who still believed that kindness should not die with time. Mina never wanted revenge. She only wanted the truth to be called by its name. Among ashes and raindrops, two strangers proved. Bravery is not about pulling the trigger, but about holding on to humanity in a place that has forgotten it. It has been an honor to serve you. All I wish is that you stay joyful and happy, wherever you are in this world. I love you, my dear audience of Wild West storytelling. Let me know what you thought of this story. Leave a comment down below. Type number 1 if you enjoyed this tale. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next gripping story from the Wild West.